What's up, GT gang? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, I'm Mojo GT, and today we are going to continue working on the Procharged 426 Hemi that we are building. And from the last video, I installed half the rotating assembly just so I can get a better understanding and show you guys the best I could. So in this video, I show you how I put the connector rod, the piston together, install the piston rings, and actually install the rest of the rotating assembly. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm not going to waste too much of your time before the video starts. And as always, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. So I'll see you guys at the end. Okay, so right here I have my ARP main bolt spec sheet, and I have M12 studs, 100 foot-pounds, M8 studs, or side bolts, 25 foot-pounds. So what we'll do, I already did this in this order. You know, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K. So with that out of the way, I'm going to torque all of these to the 100 foot-pound spec, and then these will be completely torqued. Boom shakalaka, torqued. All right guys, so what I'm going to do now, I have this broken down. The connecting rod in the back right here, remove the piston, is split, as you can see right there. Piston's right here. I have one C-ring installed. You just kind of walk it around and it'll snap into a groove. So I have one side that does not have a C-ring because I still have to install the wrist pin with the connecting rod through the two bores of the piston. So first thing that I like to do is I like to make sure that this is the correct piston. I already did that, of course, otherwise I wouldn't have put the C-ring in. So right now I'm working on cylinder number 6. You can tell by that by looking at either the crankshaft, cylinder 1, which goes down there, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So I know that my intake valve relief has to be pointed toward the middle of the engine, and the dimple has to be pointed to the front of the engine. Because my intake valve will actually sit in here. Your intake runners go to the inside of the block towards the middle. So I know that's where my intake valve has to sit. The smaller relief valve is for the exhaust valve, or the relief for the exhaust valve. It goes towards the outside of the engine because the exhaust goes out. So now that I know that this is the correct piston, I come over here to the connecting rod. I have to make sure that this orientation is the same, and it does matter what side it goes. It can be flipped around and be installed backwards. All right, so you can see this is the rod journal on the crankshaft, and you can see on this connecting rod you have a flat edge right here, and then you have this edge that actually has a bevel on the outside as well. So the flat spots actually want to come together and touch each other. So I have the bevel towards the outside journal on this side, and then the bevel is opposing on this journal. So you have flat spots touching and the bevel going towards the outside. So now I know my bevel has to go towards the outside or the back of the engine. And then I can look at the top of my piston and see that the dimple is right here. My intake valve pointing towards the middle of the engine, and my bevel is facing out. Imagine that the engine is sitting here. You have cylinders 2, 4, and 6, and here we are. That's what it looks like. This is exactly how it's going to be installed. I'm going to flip both of these over, install them as such, and slide the wrist pin through, just like this. Slide it through, and then install the other C-ring. So now the next thing I'm going to do is install the piston rings. So I had found while doing this that dry installing these rings works best for my application, and then afterwards lubricating the rings. So I have 6 rings for my application, but generally you would have 5 rings. You'll have the oil ring right here. This goes on the bottom groove. You also have your oil ring expander on the bottom, as well as a ring on top of that. These all three go on that bottom groove. Then you have a second, this is technically called the secondary compression ring. This goes on the second groove, which would be in the middle. And then you have this, which is the first compression ring, if I could pick it up. The first compression ring goes on the very top. And I have a sixth ring, which is a locking ring for my oil rings. It actually sits in that bottom groove with these three. So the piston manufacturer actually recommends installing this first and then having the piston or the oil rings installed secondary. So I will go ahead and throw this on and then get to installing these and show you guys how to install these. I would like to add that you want to make sure that you are opposing on every single one of your ring gaps before I even get started. I have this pamphlet from my piston ring manufacturer. They recommend to put the gap here. So I'll let you guys either take a screenshot or whatever, but make sure that you are opposing all of your gaps. Okay, so the next step is look at these oil rings. They're very thin, and you want to check for STD markings or some kind of dimple that indicates that this goes on the top. Because any type of dimple minus that locking ring will actually be facing towards the top of the piston. So since mine don't, I can just go ahead and install them and make sure that I'm opposing my, my ring gaps. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the top oil ring. Again, this is not stamped or has a dimple of indication of orientation. All right, so that's what that's gonna look like with that bottom groove completely filled and gapped correctly. That locking ring actually just keeps these piston rings in the same spot so they can't float around and move. So minimal blow by, great design, I really like it. So next we're gonna move on to the secondary or second compression ring. These were already pre-gapped. I did this, I showed you guys in another video. So on this, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little ridge at the end of this. Anyway, that indicates down as well as there is a dimple right here that indicates the top of the piston. So I'm gonna make sure that I have my rings opposing and I install this on the correct location. So that it goes on the second or middle groove, and we're just gonna walk it around. A lot of people say you need the piston ring installer tool, but you really don't. I have no problem doing it by hand. Honestly, I prefer doing it by hand. I feel like I have a little bit more control. So that's installed to the right location. Now we'll move on to the top compression ring. So this, there is no markings, no dimple, no writing, so it can be installed as such if you have a similar piston ring. But on mine, there is a little bit of a ridge, and that is supposed to face up. So I'm gonna go ahead and install that in the very top groove. Slide it on, and boom, just like that. Now these are ready for lubrication. Once these are lubricated, I can install this piston ring compressor. It compresses the piston rings so that you can tap the entire assembly into the block down the cylinder. All right, so I've got that opened up pretty good. I'm gonna wipe it down quick just in case there's any particulates that had gotten in there. You don't have to necessarily worry about lubricating this because you can lubricate the actual piston itself. So I have it sitting like that and slide the unit or the assembly in, tighten this, and you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of a lip so that it can slide into the bore and then you're able to tap it on. All right, everybody, so I'm really hoping that you don't fall down, but I have this installed. Also, I almost forgot, but make sure you have your bearings. They are labeled, at least mine are. For instance, right here, it'll say upper or lower. Lower would be the cap side, and the upper would actually be the connecting rod side. So I'm gonna snap that in quick. Okay, so this is what it should look like. It should be lubricated. You wanna make sure that your intake valve is pointing towards the middle of the engine, aka your intake relief valve, or intake valve relief. Slide it in. It is okay. A lot of people say, don't set the connecting rod on the cylinder. I like to do is I like to just set it there, nice and easy, and let it kind of float down. It's lubricated. It's not metal on metal. So set this in, and I'll kind of tap around the compressor to make sure that's fully seated. And then what I'll do one more time is tighten this up. Okay guys, so bear with me, my microphone died right now. As you can see, I just leveled off the compressor as I tapped on the piston, rolled over the engine, and I was just saying that we guide up the piston or the connecting rod as you are pushing it from the bottom. So I just grabbed the dead blow, tapped it up, guided it with my hand. Make sure that seat's all the way up. You don't want to hit your crankshaft, of course. And then we go ahead and grab the other bearing with the cap, get it on with assembly lube, put it on. Then we grab our bolts with the high pressure lubricant, as you can see in my hand. Get them in. We'll run those all the way in and tighten those with a breaker bar. We don't torque those just quite yet. And when I'm done, get it tight without torquing. I rotate the engine over a few times to make sure that nothing hits, considering it is a stroker kit. So then we throw everything in. All right. Everybody, check it out. We have all 8 pistons, rods, everything installed, and they are torqued. This specification for my application is actually 33 foot-pounds with a 60-degree turn afterwards. And this thing turns amazingly. So we're gonna flip this thing over and install the camshaft. Let's get it. All right guys, here it is. We have the short block technically, and we have the cam ready. That's the next step. Here are the specs on my cam with a duration at 50 thousandths lift. On the intake is 234, 246 on the exhaust. Lobe separation of 115. Advertised duration is 282, 298. So valve lift of 607 on the intake, 597 on the exhaust. My heads were all set up for this, so we'll go ahead and lube up all the journals and get ready to install it. So let's just take a minute to look at how beautiful this thing is. And don't forget to practice safe engine building, guys. Lube your shaft. So check this out, guys. They got my name on my cam. Don't really know if you can see that very well, but that's pretty sick. So the camshaft is lubricated. We're about to slide it in. I have a cam install tool that is custom made by my Uncle Art. Shout out to him again. Shout out to him like 5 times in this video. But we're gonna go ahead and throw it in. It's gonna be nice and easy. Make sure that you're not pushing really hard. You don't want to nick any of these cam bearings, especially, you know, when it's a full rebuild top to bottom. You want to make sure you're taking every precaution necessary. So we're gonna go nice and easy. Make sure that we're finding the cam bearing and sliding through each journal. So let's go ahead and get started. Throw you guys on time lapse. Yes, sir. All right, guys, so the next step we're gonna have to do is oil pump and timing chain set. So we're gonna pull all the components out, lay them out, and get ready to install. The timing chain goes first. We'll have the backing plate with the cog for the crank as well as the cam, and obviously we'll have the chain. So it's pretty easy to line up. We'll make sure that we install the crank cog in the correct orientation, so because it does matter which way it goes on. And from there we'll go ahead and throw on the oil pump and get ready to do timing cover stuff. All right, guys, so I have the lifters installed. I decided to go with the newer style. They, you know, quote unquote Hellcat lifters, but they're really just the newer design. They have a larger needle bearing, and if you notice, I have some followers and some of the most influential people in my life that introduced cars to me and I learned a lot from. And my best friends Sam and Brandon right there. Got these lifters they're not torqued. It's an 8mm bolt, 5/16, whatever, but they're in, and we're gonna start doing the timing. I'll explain to you guys how we do it. It is adjustable on the actual crank cog. You can actually advance and retard your timing physically. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that out and we'll get started. Okay, so change of plans. Unfortunately, I don't have a Woodruff key, which is basically like key stock for it's got like half moon shape. So I'll have to take this over to Home Depot, etc., or Ace Hardware, and get a woodruff key that matches that. That's this length. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Next time we are going to get a woodruff key from, there's actually a set from Harbor Freight. Anyway, it's a whole fiasco. You guys are gonna roast me, but I'll explain later. So in the next video, we're gonna go ahead and get that woodruff key. We're gonna install the double roller timing chain set, which, heads up, we don't even run in the future, but just go ahead and watch the video anyway. And then we'll go ahead and start putting the heads on and just go from there. So I'm not gonna waste any more of your time. I know this is a long video. The series is very in-depth. So I hope you guys like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.